Good evening, and welcome to the Wednesday, June 17th, 2026 meeting of the Preservation Commission. The meeting is now called to order. Will the clerk please call the roll and establish a quorum?
Thank you, Chair. Commissioners, please unmute your microphones. Vice Chair Merker.
Here.
Commissioner Rica.
Here.
Commissioner Nicholas.
Here.
Commissioner Cross.
Here.
Commissioner Lixlafkin.
Here.
And Chair Umbacher.
Here.
Thank you, Chair. We have a quorum.
I would like to remind members of the public in chambers that if you would like to speak on an agenda item, please turn in a speaker slip before the item begins. After the item is called, we will no longer accept speaker slips, and you will have 2 minutes to speak once you are called on. We will now proceed with today's agenda, beginning with the land acknowledgement and the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise if you are able for the opening acknowledgements in honor of the Sacramento's indigenous people and tribal lands. To the original people of this land, the Nisenan people of the Southern Maidu Valley and Plains Miwok, Patwin-Winton peoples, and the peoples of the Wilton Rancheria, Sacramento's only federally recognized tribe. May we acknowledge and honor the Native people who came before us and still walk beside us today on these ancestral lands by choosing to gather together today in the active practice of acknowledgement and appreciation for Sacramento's indigenous people's history, contributions, and lives. Please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So next is the approval of the consent item. Clerk, are there any members of the public who wish to speak on the consent calendar?
Thank you, Chair. I have no speaker slips on this item.
Thank you. Are there any commissioners who wish to speak on this item? No. Is there a motion and a second for the consent calendar? Do I have a second? Second. Thank you.
That was a first by Nicholas and second by Rika.
Yes.
Commissioners, please unmute your microphones. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? Motion passes.
Thank you. We will now proceed to the items under public hearings. Are there any commissioners who have any disclosures or recusals they wish to make?
I would like to recuse myself from the first item.
From item 2?
From item 2, yes.
Thank you. Item 2 is the ordinance listing 3137 33rd Street as a historic landmark on the Sacramento Register. Is there a staff presentation?
Let's go down. Thank you. Yes. Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. Hello, my name is Hazel Bess, Preservation Intern for the City of Sacramento, and I will be presenting the landmark nomination for 3137 33rd Street under file M25-11. In 2025, the property owner of 3137 33rd Street retained the services of Ella Cross, a qualified architectural historian, to prepare the historic evaluation for this property. The historic evaluation attached to your staff report concludes that the property at 3137 33rd Street appears eligible for listing on the Sacramento Register of Historic and Cultural Resources under criteria 1 and 3, pursuant to Sacramento City Code Section 17.604.210, for its association with patterns of settlement and development in Oak Park and its working-class Queen Anne architecture. The property appears eligible under Criterion 1 for its association with early Oak Park development patterns, including streetcar suburb growth, immigrant and working-class settlement, and impacts of urban renewal. Constructed in 1901 as part of the Oak Terrace Tract, the property reflects an early phase of residential development in Oak Park, Sacramento's first streetcar suburb. The property's long-term association with working-class immigrant families, including the Carroll and Williams families, illustrates broader patterns of neighborhood formation, civic engagement, and labor activity that shaped the Oak Park community. The property is also associated with the impacts of urban renewal and freeway construction in the mid-20th century, which significantly altered the surrounding neighborhood and represents an important pattern in the area's historical development. The property also appears eligible for listing under Criterion 3 as a representative example of a working-class Queen Anne residence. The building retains key character-defining features of the Queen Anne style, including its steeply pitched front-facing gable, decorative truss, asymmetrical composition, and cutaway bay window. While modest in scale and deck detailing compared to high-style examples, the property embodies the distinctive characteristics of Queen Anne architecture as adapted for working-class housing at the turn of the 20th century. The building is a relatively rare surviving example of this architectural type within Oak Park, where most extant residential development dates to later periods. A notice of the public hearing describing the proposed landmark listing was sent to the property owners at 3137 33rd Street. No objections to listing have been received by staff. The Preservation Director held a hearing on May 14th approving the statement of nomination. Staff recommends the Preservation Commission make a recommendation to the City Council to pass a motion determining the listing of 3137 33rd Street as a landmark on the Sacramento Register of Historical and Cultural Resources. Is exempt from review under the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to CEQA Guidelines Section 15308, and adopt an ordinance listing 3137 33rd Street as a landmark on the Sacramento Register of Historic and Cultural Resources. This concludes my presentation, and I will now accept any questions. Thank you.
Is there a property owner in attendance who would like to address the commission? Okay, Clerk, are there members of the public who wish to speak on this item?
Yes, Chair, we have one speaker slip from William Berg. Wrong number. Okay. We do not have any speaker slips on this item.
Thank you. Are there any commissioners who wish to speak on this item? Okay. Is there a motion and a second to adopt the ordinance listing 3137 33rd Street as a historic landmark on the Sacramento Register?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
That's moved by Commissioner Nicholas and a second by Ms. Hotkin. Thank you, Commissioners. Please unmute your microphones. All in, where's Ella Cross?
She's had to recuse
Oh, she
herself.
recused herself, I'm sorry. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? The motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. Give Ella a chance to get back.
Yes.
So next is item 3, the ordinance listing 5241 J Street, the El Dorado School, as a landmark on the Sacramento Register. Is there a staff presentation?
Good evening, Commissioners. I'll be presenting the landmark nomination for 5241 J Street under file M2613. In 2025, Preservation Sacramento and East Sacramento Preservation retained the services of Brunzell Historical, qualified architectural historians, who prepared the historic evaluation for this property, currently known as the A. Warren McClaskey Adult Center, and historically known as the El Dorado Elementary School. The historic evaluation attached to your staff report concludes that the property at 5241 J Street appears eligible for listing on the Sacramento Register of Historic and Cultural Resources for its embodiment of Sacramento School District Architectural and Engineering Commission's 1920s architecture program and of Spanish Revival architecture, and as the work of James and Charles Dean of Dean and Dean, both master architects. The property at 5241 J Street embodies the characteristics of the Spanish Revival style of architecture. There should be a photo there, but the building typifies the style primarily in its clay tile roof, textured stucco cladding, arched door openings, and a main facade arcade. The highly ornamented bell tower, decorative metal window grills and balconette, and main entrance French doors with decorative pilasters, side lights, and transom also reference the Spanish Revival style. The property also embodies the Sacramento School District Architectural and Engineering Commission's distinctive architecture program of the 1920s. Updated school design during this era was a product of the progressive education movement, which began at the turn of the 20th century and advocated for improved ventilation and fire safety in schools, as well as a more child-centered teaching. Sacramento began a program of school building in the 1920s both to update the school buildings and to accommodate the city's growing population. The elements of the school that reflect this building program include its long wings, corridors on the west with widely spaced windows, use of fire-resistant materials such as brick and stucco, and east or north-facing classrooms with large window openings designed to maximize students' exposure to the outdoors and to bring daylight and ventilation into classrooms. The school was designed by James and Charles Dean of Dean & Dean. The Dean brothers, after working in the office of the state architect in the 1910s, formed their private practice to take over the city's school building program. The firm was one of the most productive in Sacramento during the 1920s, designing many high-profile Sacramento buildings, both public and residential. The El Dorado School's main building was designed by James Dean and constructed in phases between 1921 and 1930. Charles Dean designed the attached auditorium, constructed in 1939. Few alterations have been made to the exterior since initial construction, primarily consisting of the construction of non-contributing additions and the replacement of original window materials. It continues to convey its significance through historic features, including its clay tile roof, ornamental grills, heavily textured stucco cladding, decorative campanile, main facade arcade, arched doorways, and fenestration pattern. The Preservation Director held a hearing on June 4th, approving the statement of nomination. Staff recommends the Preservation Commission make a recommendation to the City Council to pass a motion determining the listing of 5241 J Street as a landmark on the Sacramento Register of Historic and Cultural Resources as exempt from review under the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to CEQA Guidelines Section 15308 and adopt an ordinance listing 5241 J Street as a landmark on the Sacramento Register of Historic and Cultural Resources. A notice of the public hearing describing the proposed landmark listing was sent to the property owner at 5241 J Street. The property owner has voiced neither objection nor support for listing. The city has received letters in support of listing from Preservation Sacramento, East Sacramento Preservation Neighborhood Association, and 41 individual members of the public, including many East Sacramento residents. This concludes my presentation, and I will now accept any questions. Thank you.
If I may, Commissioners, my name is Henry Fuse, Preservation Planner. In response to public comments on the proposal to list this building, we are going to be amending the ordinance to remove the language that notes the expansive property as a character-defining feature. So we will be amending that language to remove that so that there's no misinterpretation that could occur in the future on what standard or what feature that might be applying to limit the redevelopment of the site in the future.
Thank you. Is the property owner in attendance who would like to address the commission? Clerk, are there members of the public who wish to address this item?
Thank you, Chair. I have 3 speaker slips for this item. The first is William Berg.
The light is on. William Berg with Preservation Sacramento, and we've been working with East Sacramento Preservation for the past 2 years to move forward this nomination to the National Register of Historic Places. It is going to be on the National Register agenda for the State Historical Resources Commission in August, but we're very happy that it's also moving at the city level. So the two are happening in parallel, and hopefully maybe they could both be listed about the same time. And I understand there's no July commission meeting, so the board, your commission may not have the opportunity to provide comment, but so you're aware that it's happening. There's been a lot of positive response and a lot of love for the school at the 7-Eleven meetings that have happened at the site. So thank you for your time, and I hope that you'll move this forward with the recommendation to the City Council to list the property in the Sacramento Register. Thank you.
Next speaker is Bruce Marwick.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Bruce Marwick. I'm Preservation Chair and President of the Sacramento Art Deco Society, and this building, El Dorado School, has been a longtime favorite of our organization. Some might say, well, from the exterior, it isn't Art Deco, but it is a classic building that we also appreciate other genres like Spanish Revival. But what's most important to us is actually some of the additions, specifically the 1939 auditorium, which was also done by Charles Dean, and it is particularly the interior in the classic streamlined modern style. It has wonderful curved walls, original stage, other details, and most specifically, it has a terrific WPA New Deal inspired mural by Earl Barnett. And I don't actually know the measurements, but it has to be over 30 feet wide, and it's a terrific piece. So we advocated for the building, and hopefully it will be preserved. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next and final speaker on this item is Will Green.
My name is Will Green, East Sacramento Preservation. How I first became exposed to the structure of the school was actually volunteering for the past 2 years with the garden class of the McClatchy Adult Education Center. And it quickly grows on you to the point of, I explored with Preservation Sacramento whether this would be appropriate for a nomination to the National Register. And that's when things began over 2 years ago. I'm curious today, for future reference, many of us directed letters of support to Preservation Director Sean DeCourcy, and I don't know if those come directly to you or not, or if that was in your mention of the number that was received by Sean. But if not, know that I personally am aware of at least probably that many, if not more, that but probably didn't come to you directly by e-comment, just because of the Granicus system and all of that. So we strongly support this nomination and your approval to go to City Council and to try to work with, this is a 4-acre site of land, which is prime real estate. I think there are many developers that are interested in preserving the historic nature of the property of that building in their development proposals. So we hope you go forward with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I have no more speaker slips.
Thank you. Are there any commissioners who wish to speak on this item?
Chair, if I may, I'd like to clarify something that our staff Henry Fuse mentioned. Again, Preservation Director Sean DeCourcy. So he mentioned the description of the property as expansive property, character defining feature. That specifically is in the proposed ordinance, section 1, sub-bullet I, where it lists the character defining features of the property. And the public comment that he referenced specifically cited the expansive property being described as a character defining feature. And when we looked into this, we agree that the description of the entire property being a character defining feature is overreaching in its description and could affect future proposals to adaptively reuse or redevelop the property. And so we'd like to propose, staff's recommending that in the commission's motion, they specifically amend, again, section 1 of the proposed ordinance, sub-bullet I, that describes the expansive property as a character defining feature. So if the commission does elect to amend that motion, you'll want to, or amend that criteria, you'll have to make that part of your motion today. Thank you.
So are there any other commissioners that wish to speak on this item?
Yeah, I had another potential, this is just on the narrative description, so less tangible, but potential copy edits. There were 2 sections that kind of struck me as not necessary, and I think we could cut. One, at the beginning, it goes all the way back to the Nisenan and the Maidu people, and then the Spanish showed up, and then we found gold in a very like yada, yada, yada sort of way. It's not really relevant to the nomination, and I don't think we need that in like every building we nominate, so I think we could cut that. And then a few pages later, it goes on about in the history of East Sacramento. There's again some kind of extra flowery language about how fashionable and desirable the neighborhood was, but there's nothing about the segregation and all of that was going on at the time. Again, I don't think it's necessarily relevant to the nomination. I just don't think we need to talk so glowingly about what was going on there. So for both that first section that goes all the way back to the Native American people in kind of a glossy way, and that section about East Sacramento being so fashionable in an overly glossy way, I think we could cut those.
If I can just clarify, you are referring to the National Register nomination form that's attached to the staff report, right? Not the ordinance itself?
Correct, if we're able to make changes to that. which we were not. It's on page 22 and 24 of the document we got.
Yeah, I can discuss the National Register process during the director's report, but this form's submitted to us as is, so we can't really make
Got it.
any amendments to it at the current time. But I can sort of discuss the process and why this National Register nomination is not coming to you separately to make comments to the State Historic Resources Commission.
Okay.
My only other comment was that I'm excited to also see that it's being nominated at the National Register as well. So do I have a motion and a second to adopt the ordinance with the revisions to the section 1 and sub-bullet I?
Yes, I would like to make a motion that we amend the bullet point I to reflect that the expansive grounds are not a character-defining feature and that we would like to forward this to City Council.
I'll second that motion.
Just to clarify, and you'll be moving item 2, or item 1 in the in staff recommendation regarding the CEQA findings as well?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion by Commissioner Cross and a second by Vice Chair Merker. Commissioners, please unmute your microphones. All in favor of the motion and second, please say aye.
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 Opposed? None, and none abstained. The motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 4 is the LGBTQ+ Historic Experience Project, potentially eligible landmarks in historic district. Is there a staff presentation?
Good evening, Commissioners. Henry Fuse, Preservation Planner with the City of Sacramento. Sorry, I gotta get really close to this. I will be presenting the LGBTQ+ Historic Experience Project, potentially eligible landmarks and historic district under file M23005. So this project is a direct follow-up to our LGBTQ+ Historic Experience Project that we completed in 2024 that developed a historic context statement and historic survey, surveying Lavender Heights Historic District and 5 potential historic landmarks. We conducted a significant amount of public outreach during this process and conducted a significant amount of historical research and oral history interviews to help develop this historic context statement that we brought to this commission back in 2024. So this, so as I just mentioned, we completed the project in 2024, and in 2025, we developed a draft historic district plan for the Lavender Heights Historic District, which we brought to you earlier this year, which we are bringing again this evening just as a bundle with the potential landmark nominations and historic district nominations. And in this year, we are planning, following this hearing, to begin the nomination process after we refine the nominations based on your comments and public comments. So within the Lavender Heights Historic District, we have 12 contributing resources and 29 non-contributing resources. This is notable for its cultural significance to the LGBTQ+ community. And you can see on the right side there, the darker purple is the contributing resources and the lighter purple is the non-contributing resources, and the boundaries are pretty tightly snapped around the oddly shaped historic district. And all of the documentation for the information of the public is available on our website, on our property or project webpage. So the 12 properties that are included as contributing resources in the historic district are those on your screen. So we have the former Lambda Community Center on L Street, the Mercantile Saloon also on L Street, Faces and formerly K Street Station at 2000 K Street, the Western, now known as the Depot at 2001 K Street, the former Sacramento Women's Center and the home of the Gifted Gardener at 2220 J Street, the first Sacramento Women's Building, as well as Lioness Books at 2224 J Street, the offices of Dr. Harvey Thompson and Sandy Pomerantz, and the home of the Open Book at 912 21st Street, the First United Methodist Church at 2100 J Street, The Sacramento AIDS Foundation had 2 locations, one at 2115 J Street and one at 1900 K Street, and the new Helvetia Roaster at 1215 19th Street. Within the the Lavender Heights Historic District Plan, as we brought to you several months ago, we identified each building and developed character-defining features for each of those buildings to assist with drafting objective design guidelines for those buildings. And it clarifies what is subject to review and what exactly we're going to be looking for to assist with the future development in the district and development on the contributing properties. We are not going to be significantly regulating non-contributing properties. This is a departure from our architectural historic districts where we are going to be having height standards and sizing standards. In the Lavender Heights Historic District Plan, we are going to be relying on our base zoning code and citywide design review for the development of non-contributing resources. So for property owners of non-contributing resources, the status will not necessarily change for how we review them, but for properties that are identified as contributing resources, we have a clear set of guidelines that will be that are outlined in the Historic District Plan. And as usual, with our standard process, most of the items on the screen are going to be considered exempt from planning review, so roofing replacements, any interior interior improvements on non-publicly accessible interiors, mechanical equipment upgrades, utilities, what have you. So now moving on to our potential historic landmarks. So we have 8 proposed landmarks. As I mentioned before, we developed 5 evaluations as part of the LGBTQ+ Historic Experience Project. But in the past 2 years, we have been able to conduct research on 3 additional properties, which I'll go into in just a moment. But the 5 on your screen at the moment are the 5 that were initially conducted as part of the project. So we have the Alternative Coffee Shop at 2215 P Street, which was a location outside of the bars that members of the LGBTQ+ community could attend. Sure. I'll lean over, sorry. That members of the LGBTQ+ community could attend that were outside of the bar scene, that was not focused on alcohol, and could provide a level of community to people that could not get into bars. And this building was actually significant for its association with the development of the Society for Homosexual Freedom, which was a pivotal student organization at Sac State in the early 70s. On the top right, we have the Incredible Edible, which was a restaurant in the late 70s. We have the Offices of Mom Guess What in the center, which was one of Sacramento's longest running queer newspaper organizations. It was pivotal in connecting people to services and each other and getting news out there to the local community when the modern newspaper was not or the broader newspaper like the Sacramento Bee was not catering to LGBTQ+ news stories. On the lower right side, we have the Blue Moon, which was a lesbian bar, one of several in Sacramento, and this was a prominent location where members of the lesbian community would meet to after sports games and host community organizations, and this was a prominent location that was identified. And then we also have on the bottom right, Bojangles on Folsom Boulevard, which was one of Sacramento's earliest gay bars, and we actually have the owner behind me here, so I'm sure he'll talk a little bit about it in a couple minutes. So those were the first 5 that we identified as part of the project, and then we also have 3 additional properties that we identified. On the top center, we have the Mirage, which was a short-lived Black-owned lesbian bar, the only one that we are aware of in Sacramento. On the bottom left, we have Josephtown and Country, which operated in the 80s and 90s on Del Paso Boulevard. And then we have the Windsor Bar on the bottom right, which was operating in the 1950s, which is one of the earliest that we have any documentation for. By merit of it being from the 1950s, we don't really have a lot of documentation, but we have we do have solid data that it was a queer establishment, and we are actively searching for more information about that property. So with that, I can accept any questions and comments, and I appreciate any feedback from the public and the commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak on this item?
Thank you, Chair. I do have one speaker slip from William Berg.
Good evening once again. William Berg with Preservation Sacramento. We have been, as an organization, involved with this effort and partnering with the city to move forward this research and these recommendations. It's been about a decade or so since I was on the board of Sacramento Heritage, Inc. and was doing walking tours in conjunction with the Lavender Library. And it's interesting how what starts out as a walking tour and seeing groups of people looking at a building and talking about the history, and all of a sudden people go, maybe there's something worth looking more closely. And so it's kind of amazing. A decade doesn't seem that long at my age, but to go from starting walking tours and, hey, isn't this interesting, to actually seeing it come to fruition as city landmarks, which is amazing. It is forward-thinking on behalf of the city of Sacramento, its staff, its commissions, and its city council, and I am going to be very happy to see this go before city council, so I hope you'll give it your full support. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I have no more speaker slips on this item.
Thank you. Are there any commissioners who wish to speak on this item? Go ahead.
I have a quick question. First of all, thank you. The exhaustive research on this is like kind of mind-blowing. 516 pages was, I didn't read all of them, but I read a lot of them. But I have a question. As a lifelong Sacramento, when did the name Lavender Heights come? I didn't see that anywhere in your research. And it doesn't seem like it was always called that, but when did that name emerge?
As far as our research could tell, it seemed to pop up in the late 80s, but there wasn't really a lot of, nobody really knows who coined it. There were some people that called it Fruit Flats, apparently, and some people called it Lavender Heights, and I guess Lavender Heights stuck over time. But there's a lot of lore around it, and that's why we didn't necessarily have any concrete documentation on where the name came from.
Go ahead, Commissioner Cross.
I just want to comment a little bit about the DPR form for Bojangles. As a person who was there from its very big, like 1985 transfer from being strictly a gay bar to being a absolutely crucial part of Sacramento underground punk rock history, which of course includes people of all different sexual orientations. I just want to mention that the DPR says that it was Bojangles, and then it was Club Me, and then it was the Cattle Club. And I would like to point out that since I was there, and I confirmed this with Mr. Seide, just to make sure I wasn't completely insane, that it was both. That's how I remember it. It was a gay bar and a punk club, and it was chosen to be leased as a punk club by first Greg Dean and Greg Doucette, and then Jerry Perry, who ran it successfully for almost 20 years. It was chosen because it was a gay club, because the clientele that that they were seeking to reach, the music-loving punk rock people of Sacramento, a lot of them are not straight people, and all of them, for the most part, are the whole punk rock ethos is anti-racist, anti-homophobia, inclusive. Anti-establishment kind of ethos. And so I would just like it so much if we could capture that very important part of its history in this DPR, if that's at all possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other commissioners who wish to comment? Yes.
Oh, it is a tricky mic today. I've mentioned this before, and I think I just want to have it reiterated to me. So these structures, many of them on their own do not have significant architectural features, and the story that we are trying to tell here comes from a certain period of significance. So how does that translate to what the city would be looking at for any development permits, for example, looking at a specific period of significance that contributes to this particular narrative, and how do we, or how do the building owners kind of do their own research to state that their development applications are in line with that period of significance?
So our historic district plan, we did utilize historic photographs to view what the buildings looked like historically, but our historic district plan is essentially just to maintain the form of the building so they're recognizable to members of the community that utilize those spaces in the period of significance. Since they're not architecturally significant, or 8 of them are not architecturally significant in their own right, we are going by as long as they're recognizable essentially by somebody who existed in those spaces. But there actually are 4 properties that are already landmarked on the register that are going to be included in the historic district.
I would just add, Commissioners, that the same methodology goes for the individual landmarks that are outside the historic district. So the idea is we have historic evaluations, and we'll eventually have a draft ordinance that will describe the features that existed at the time that are important to be able to convey that period to, again, to a person who would have frequented the building, or in the future be able to tell that story to people who were not able to frequent the building because the use has changed and it's a different era and time.
Any other commissioners have any comments? I just want to say that I'm also excited to see this one on Del Paso Boulevard. It's got quite a layered history, so I'm glad to see that that one's being recognized for all of that history. And I'm kind of dating myself because I often went to the cattle when it was the Cattle Club, so I'm kind of excited about that one too. A lot of my college friends are quite shocked that they didn't know that what its history was, and I was telling them, I'm like, guess what's potentially going to be nominated? So yeah, I think this is really exciting that you guys are moving this forward and with so many nominations. Anybody else? Well, this one is just for us to review and comment, so we don't have a vote. So this concludes the discussion calendar. So we can move on to the director's report.
All right, thank you, Commissioners. Again, Sean DeCourcy, Preservation Director. I don't have very many items for the Director's report tonight, but I do have one item I'd like to report out. So staff recently received notice that 4 Sacramento properties have been scheduled for consideration by the State Historical Resources Commission at their August 7th, 2026 meeting. 3 nominations to the National Register of Historic Places and 1 delisting from the National Register of Historic Places. Because the Preservation Commission does not meet in July, the Commission would not have the opportunity to review and provide comments on these nominations as is required by our certified local government status. But I did want to summarize the each nomination for you tonight, and then give you some updated information about our progress reviewing these. So the first is Grant Union High School. If you're familiar with Grant, it's a Spanish colonial revival campus constructed between 1934 and 1940, designed by architects Harry Devine and Charles Dean, aforementioned. The nomination highlights the school's architectural significance as well as its association with the early Field Act school construction standards, which were earthquake standards. The next is a Thompson Diggs Company building. This is a warehouse building associated with the Thompson Diggs Company in State Senator Marshall Diggs, designed by architect Clarence Cuff. The property is nominated for its association with Sacramento's industrial and commercial development. The property is also applying for federal rehabilitation tax credits as part of Sacramento's first major office to residential conversion project at 3rd and R Streets. The next is the El Dorado School property, which you've just taken action on tonight. And as I mentioned, I would discuss in the director's report, so the El Dorado School is being heard at that commission meeting as well. Then finally, the Alkali Flat Central Historic District, a contributing resource at 1111, sorry, did I do that too many ones? 4 ones, 1111, F Street, is proposed for delisting. This would be an amendment to the existing historic district that would revise the status of the property from contributing to non-contributing, citing the reason that the building was constructed outside the district's period of significance. We're considering what to do in terms of all of these nominations, but staff has requested that the Office of Historic Preservation consider continuing the delisting item to a subsequent hearing date that would allow for local review and comment. These other nominations are somewhat standard and fairly non-controversial, but this delisting item is somewhat unusual, and staff feels that the commission should have the opportunity to consider the request and weigh in on it, since it is also a locally listed contributing resource to one of our historic districts that was updated in 2018. So staff will continue to coordinate with the Office of Historic Preservation regarding scheduling, and will keep the commission informed of any updates. That concludes my director's report, and I'm available to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Sean. Do any commissioners have any questions for Sean? Okay. And the next item is the commissioners' comments and ideas and questions. Are there any commissioners who wish to speak? Okay. The last item is public comments, matters not on the agenda. Clerk, are there any members of the public who wish to speak on this item?
Thank you, Chair. I do not have any speaker slips for this item.
Thank you, Clerk. This concludes today's agenda. Thank you, everyone, for your participation, and the meeting is adjourned.